Emma's laugh could have passed for sincerity if you weren't married to her. It rang out over the low buzz of our Sunday afternoon Scrabble game, where she just plunked down Quizify like it was an actual word. She even threw in a dramatic little eyebrow raise, like she was trying out for a role in a sitcom nobody asked for. "You're making stuff up now," I said, squinting at the board. "It's a thing," she replied, casually sipping from her monogram tumbler like it held liquid credibility. I leaned back in my chair, arms folded, and stared at the board like it had just personally insulted me. "If Quizify is a word, I'm the Duke of Nebraska." She smirked. "Well, Your Highness, it's in the online Scrabble dictionary, which you refuse to download because you think apps are a government conspiracy." "That's not why," I said, reaching for my coffee. "It's because I have taste and standards, unlike the developers of Quizify." She laughed again, this time more naturally. And for a moment, it felt like the old days, when we still laughed together without trying. But just as quick, the moment passed, like a car speeding by a billboard that once meant something. There were a lot of those lately. Moments that used to stretch into hours now clipped down into seconds. I'd tell myself things were just going through a phase. That word had become my go-to duct tape, the kind you wrap around a leaking pipe you've got no intention of replacing. That evening, we were supposed to go to her cousin's baby shower. I say supposed to, but somehow the invitation mysteriously got lost, which was weird because it was an email. "I was free to come if I really wanted," Emma said, with the same tone you'd used to offer someone a seat at the dentist's office. I took the hint and stayed home. While she was gone, I decided to clean out the attic. Because when you're on the verge of suspecting your marriage has termites, you start looking in dusty places. Now, the attic wasn't the kind of place you just casually stroll into. It had one of those wooden pull-down ladders that always feels like it might collapse halfway through, and inside, it smelled like time and regret. Boxes of old Christmas decorations, expired light bulbs we'd never thrown away, and one ancient yoga mat that could probably apply for Medicare. And then there was the box. It was one of those storage bins you don't remember owning, tucked behind a lamp shaped like a pineapple. You know, the usual attic fare. The box was labeled Taxes 2014 to 2016, which should have been enough to scare me off. But I opened it anyway, because I am a man who fears the IRS less than marital mystery. Inside were folders, old receipts, and a stack of notebooks tied together with a red string. The top notebook was a planner, one of those fancy ones with quotes at the top of each page like, "Live with intention," and "Hustle and heals." You know the type. The kind that promises to change your life and ends up holding grocery lists and reminders to buy socks. Except this one. This one had annotations. Not business-wise stuff. Not even to-do lists. Just names. First names, in neat, cursive writing. Next to cities. And dates. Some were underlined. Others had smiley faces. One had a tiny drawing of a man in a top hat. I flipped to the back page, and there, in a circle of red ink, were the words, "Tuesdays are for Tyler," with a doodle of a tiny martini glass. I just stared at it, blinked, then stared again. It felt like finding a landmine in a field labeled Family Memories. I mean, I've seen Lifetime movies that started this way. Bad ones. It was all just vague enough to be meaningless, but also very not. So I did what any confused husband would do. I Googled Tyler plus Tuesday plus Martini plus Denver. Don't do that. You get a lot of results. None of them helpful. Though I did learn Denver has a shockingly large number of men named Tyler who enjoy happy hour. I tried to play it cool when Emma came back that night. She walked through the door humming some Taylor Swift song, dropped her purse on the bench, and greeted me with a peck on the cheek like nothing had changed. Like she didn't keep a ledger of names in her day planner like it was a social calendar from the Twilight Zone. "How was the baby shower?" I asked, casually, like a man asking if the chicken was too salty. She shrugged. "Oh, you know. Onesies, mimosas, crying for no reason. Sounds like a Tuesday with Tyler," I muttered under my breath. She paused mid-step. "What?" I shook my head. "Nothing. Just thinking out loud." I could see her watching me, the way you watch someone when they're one sentence away from knowing too much. But she didn't press. She just went to the kitchen, probably to pretend we still functioned like a normal couple. Over the next few days, I became the world's most amateur sleuth. I started keeping my own notes. I called it the curious case of the cursive calendar. Every day, I waited for a sign, some crack in the wallpaper, a Freudian slip, or maybe just a misplaced sock that screamed, "I belong to Derek in Des Moines." Instead, I got quiet mornings, normal dinners, passive-aggressive debates about how to load the dishwasher, All very standard. Too standard. Then came the Thursday dinner. We were invited to a small gathering at our friend's place. Mid-level wine, artisan crackers, that sort of thing. A couple of Emma's work friends were there, including one guy, Brian something, who looked like he moisturized with unicorn tears and spoke only in startup buzzwords. Emma's the heartbeat of the marketing team, he said, pouring her a glass of wine with a little too much wrist flourish. She's got that energy, you know? Like magnetic synergy. You're lucky, Eric. I smiled, nodded, wished for a meteor. Later, as we were leaving, Brian the Magnificent handed Emma a to-go container, just in case she wanted a midnight snack. She laughed like he'd invented humor. I held the door for them both, trying not to trip on my own resentment. In the car, I asked, so, Tuesdays are for Tyler, and Thursdays are for Brian? She blinked at me. What? Nothing, I said. Just writing a poem in my head. She didn't respond. Just stared out the window, probably counting the number of men who could be turned into haikus. That night, I made a decision. Not a rage-fueled one. No storming out, no dramatic speeches. Just a quiet, calm, deliberate choice. I was going to outplay her. If she wanted to treat this marriage like a game, then fine. But I wasn't going to be the clueless husband who finds out too late and cries into his couch cushions while she updates her Instagram with inspirational quotes about self-discovery. I'd play it smart. Collect more clues. Wait. Plan. Because Emma might have written the rulebook on secrets, but I was about to become fluent in her handwriting. I don't know what it says about me that I started taking Emma's planner to work with me. Maybe nothing good. But it was sitting right there on the desk, and she had that new one already sleek, all minimalist and corporate. So I figured the old one was retired from active duty. Like a veteran now living a quiet life on the bookshelf, never to be opened again. Except by her husband, who was now running unauthorized research. I didn't take the whole thing at once, just pages. 2 at first, folded neatly into a manila folder labeled Taxes 2020, because nothing says, don't look here, like the IRS. At the office, I ran my own operation between budget reviews and conference calls. My boss thought I was knee-deep in numbers, when I was actually trying to connect the dots between Tyler, Jared, and someone known only as F. I didn't know what F stood for, but I was willing to bet it wasn't Franklin or Fun Run Committee. These were weekday names, and they had personality. Emma didn't pencil in people on weekdays unless they mattered. The thing was, Emma wasn't a sloppy person. She didn't leave things lying around, didn't scribble names on napkins or stash secret phones in cereal boxes. She was a planner. An efficient, put-together, color-coded planner. If she was doing something wrong, she was doing it with highlighters and intention. The evidence wasn't in what was written, it was in what wasn't. There were no Thursday night yoga classes anymore, even though she still wore her Namaste in bed sweatshirt like she'd just come from doing downward dog with strangers. Her work dinners were always vague. Team outing, she'd say, like she worked for a bowling league and not a software company. And her texts? Suddenly full of phrases like catching up with an old friend and networking event, which, in our marriage, translated loosely to don't ask. And yet, none of that really proved anything. You can't walk into a courtroom with a screenshot of the word networking and expect a jury to nod solemnly and say, yes, that's definitely adultery. You need something more. I found it on a Saturday morning at the community center. Not the place you'd expect scandal. The building still smelled faintly of gym socks and failed ambition. But Emma had been volunteering there on weekends for the past 3 months, helping organize some initiative that involved clipboards and folding tables. I hadn't questioned it. It was her thing. And if she found joy alphabetizing name tags and handing out tote bags, who was I to interfere? But when I showed up that morning, hoping to surprise her and maybe ask if she'd seen my measuring tape, real reason, see if F was actually a person, she wasn't there. What was there was a large printed schedule, taped to the door of room C, with a neat grid of time slots and volunteer names. There was no Emma. Not in the morning slot. Not in the afternoon. Not in the tentative list. I stood there staring at that paper like it had personally betrayed me. I even double-checked the spelling. Maybe she used her maiden name? Nope. No Emma. No E. Hartley. No Mrs. Clipboard. I went inside and asked the lady at the check-in table if Emma had been there lately. She looked at me like I'd asked if Elvis was available for karaoke. Emma, she said, flipping through a binder with the urgency of someone solving world hunger. I don't think we have an Emma. She's been coming for a few months now, I said. Usually helps with the events team? Oh, she said, as if something clicked. You mean the woman who was here in May? With the guy who brought that weird foldable espresso cart? I don't think so. She gave me a polite, slightly bored smile. I'm not sure. Sorry. I nodded, thanked her, and walked out. Outside, I stood in the parking lot for a while, holding a pamphlet for Senior Zumba. It had nothing to do with anything, but I felt like I should be holding something. My wife was not at the community center. She had never been at the community center, at least not in any consistent, documented, clipboard-sanctioned way. So where had she been? The espresso cart detail stuck with me. That wasn't a vague comment. That was a choice. A man who brings his own cart is either a professional barista or a man compensating for personality with caffeine gadgets. And if Emma was hanging out with him, he was probably the kind of guy who said things like mouthfeel and thought artisan ice was a personality trait. I didn't tell Emma I went to the center. That night, she came home wearing the shirt she always wore on volunteer days, and I didn't say a word. Just nodded, asked how the tote bags were going, and mentally wrote down, Espresso Man, possible F. The more I looked, the more cracks I found. A few days later, I was in the garage trying to find our level when I saw Emma's old phone in the drawer marked, Electronics, Don't Throw Away. It was her backup phone, the one she used before she upgraded to her work-life balance model, as she called it. Which was rich, considering her version of balance seemed to involve regular off-site meetings with people who had one-letter names. Now, I didn't plan to look at the phone. That's important. I opened the drawer because I needed a charger. But the phone turned on when I plugged it in. It was still logged in, still connected, and still full of Emma's curated digital breadcrumbs. The messages weren't scandalous. No, I miss you already, or last night was amazing. Just short little things. Meet same place, and running 10 minutes late. But the pattern said enough. Tuesdays, Thursdays, sometimes Mondays, always late afternoon, always followed by a message that said, traffic. I cross-checked them with her planner. The dates lined up too well. There were no names in the messages, just numbers. But one of the messages said, you bring the chess set, which immediately ruled out any romantic mystery. Because if there's one thing Emma hates more than confrontation, it's chess. Which meant this guy played chess. Probably in a cafe. Possibly with his own espresso cart. That was when I made the call. Not to him. I wasn't ready for that. I called Charles. Charles is not a private investigator. He's my cousin. He's also chronically unemployed, weirdly skilled at navigating social media, and has the attention span of a Labrador on Red Bull. But give him a name and a city, and he'll find a person faster than a skip tracer with a grudge. Tell me everything, I said. But make it sound like I'm not pathetic. Too late, he replied. Send me a number. I gave him the number from Emma's backup phone. By the next morning, I had a name, Felix Monroe. Chess enthusiast. Runs an independent coffee truck called Espress Yourself. 41. Divorced. Attends urban poetry readings and thinks suspenders are still in. Felix. That's what the F stood for. I didn't tell Emma. I needed more. Not just proof. Something solid. Something she couldn't spin into networking. So I did what any reasonable man would do. I joined his newsletter. Yes, Felix had a newsletter. Weekly emails titled Notes from the Grind. Bad puns. Coffee facts. Announcements about where he'd be parked next. And in the upcoming Thursday email, there it was. Catch me slinging pour-overs at 9th and Park from 3 to 7 p.m. That was Emma's next volunteer day. I didn't follow her. I didn't put on a trench coat and fake mustache and hide behind a parking meter. That's TV stuff. I just waited. When she came home that night, she mentioned nothing about tote bags. Nothing about community or events. She said it was productive. Then she changed into sweatpants and asked if I wanted to watch something on TV. I nodded. Sure. Absolutely. Let's sit down and unwind from your productive espresso-fueled day with Felix. Because now, I wasn't wondering if anymore. I was just waiting for the moment I could say, well, this has been fun, but not yet. That moment would come later. And it would be beautiful. Emma decided to clean the garage on a Sunday. Not just sweep it out or move a few boxes around, but full-blown reorganization, label maker, gloves, music from a playlist called Productive Vibes. Which was ironic, since the most productive thing she'd done lately was schedule secret meetings with a man who owned more coffee accessories than an entire Starbucks. I watched her through the window while pretending to be on a Zoom call. There was no Zoom call. I just didn't feel like helping her move boxes we both agreed 5 years ago should have gone to the dump. There she was, happily stacking old power tools next to a box of unused wedding gifts, humming like someone with a completely clean conscience. At one point, she found our tandem bike, the one we rode twice before realizing we preferred not speaking during exercise. She held up one of the helmets, gave it a little nostalgic shake, and placed it on a shelf like she was honoring the past instead of quietly rebranding our future. Later that afternoon, when she came inside, she handed me a basket of mismatched gloves, half-used tape rolls, and 3 keys that opened absolutely nothing. She said, "These were in your box, like I'd committed a crime against domestic order." I nodded. "Thank you." I was wondering where my collection of random disappointments went. She didn't laugh. Emma had started skipping the laugh step in our exchanges, especially when they involved sarcasm. We were down to functional dialogue and safe topics like laundry, weather, and people we mutually disliked. Everything else was either ignored or rerouted. I didn't confront her that day. That would have been too easy. Instead, I waited until I was sure, really sure, that she wasn't just bored or exploring a quirky new hobby involving chess players and coffee jargon. I needed something with weight, something she couldn't smile through. Charles delivered. Of course he did. He sent me a link to a post on Felix's business page. "Behind the beans, meet the people who inspire me." It sounded like the kind of post that belonged on a networking site where people pretend to care about leadership seminars, but I clicked it anyway. There she was, Emma, in the third photo, standing next to Felix. He was holding a French press like it was a newborn. She was smiling. Not the smile she gave to neighbors or people who complimented her blouse. This was the kind of smile she hadn't used around me since we upgraded our mattress. The caption said, "Incredible energy. Brilliant conversation. Thursdays just aren't the same without her." Felix didn't use her full name, but Emma had a very distinct style. It was her, no doubt. I didn't save the image or print it or frame it above the fireplace. I just stared at it, closed the tab, and sat back in my chair. Then I opened my calendar and picked a date. Thursday. Fitting. That morning, Emma left in her community initiative outfit, which suspiciously looked like what people wear to casual brunches with the kind of people who pronounce cacao like it's sacred. She said, "Wish me luck," and I did. I even smiled. I was in that rare zone where being calm is no longer a sign of peace but quiet preparation. She returned around 6. Set down her bag. Told me it was a little chaotic today, but rewarding. That was her line. She could have been talking about a yoga session, a protest, or a back alley haircut. Same delivery every time. I waited until she changed into sweatpants and turned on some show where everyone's either crying or doing a home renovation. Then I sat next to her on the couch, looked at the screen for a minute, then turned and said, "So, how's Felix?" There was a beat. Just a short one. But it was there. Then she said, "Felix who?" It was almost impressive. Clean. Quick. Just enough confusion to make it seem like I'd mispronounced something. "Felix Monroe," I said. "Coffee guy. Chess player. Thursdays just aren't the same without you, apparently." She paused the show. "Why are you saying that name like it's supposed to mean something?" I nodded. "Okay. We're doing the blank slate routine. That's fine. I really don't know who you're talking about." I turned to her. "He posted a photo. It's public. You're in it. Standing next to him. Smiling like someone just handed you a golden retriever puppy and told you it was yours forever." Now her face changed. Not guilt. Not shock. That would have required a sense of consequence. This was annoyance. The same face she made when someone at a restaurant asked for her table's ketchup bottle. That was part of a project. He asked if he could take a picture. It wasn't personal. I stared at her. "He wrote that Thursdays aren't the same without you." She folded her arms. "I go there sometimes to talk. That's not a crime." "No," I said, "but rebranding it as community volunteer work, while building some weekly barista chess connection with a man who posts soft-focus photos of you like he's curating a lifestyle magazine, that's weird." Emma rolled her eyes, the universal sign for, this conversation is over, even if it's not. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said, turning the show back on. "I haven't even started." She sighed. "What exactly are you accusing me of?" "I'm not accusing. I'm just clarifying. You're not cheating on me. You're just engaging in weekly photo-worthy conversations with a man who thinks pour-over technique is intimate. And doing it while telling me you're distributing flyers." She hit pause again. "I don't understand why you're doing this." "Because I know." She didn't answer. "I know you haven't been at the community center." I checked. I talked to the people there. They don't know you. You're not on any volunteer list. There are no tote bags. No initiatives. Just you and a man with suspenders discussing the notes of Ethiopian roast beans and occasionally taking selfies. Emma didn't try to deny it this time. She just said it wasn't serious. Didn't seem unserious from the write-up. It wasn't like that. Then explain it. I don't owe you a breakdown of every conversation I've had in the last 6 months, she said. No, you don't, I said. But you do owe me the truth, or at least a version of it that doesn't include pretend volunteer shifts and secret photo ops. She got quiet. Not the reflective kind. The how do I get out of this without actually addressing anything kind. I just needed something for myself, she said finally. And that something was Felix Monroe, local latte philosopher? It wasn't about him. It was about me. That's convenient, I said. Because I've been here the whole time. Paying bills, making jokes you no longer laugh at, and apparently existing as the commercial break between your espresso adventures. She rubbed her temple like I'd given her a mild inconvenience. Not like I'd just laid out a double life she'd curated with the enthusiasm of a Pinterest board. It's not like I did anything unforgivable. You lied. I protected our peace. I stood up. That was enough. I wasn't going to stand there and let her rebrand lying as mindfulness. I'm going to the basement, I said. What's in the basement? She asked. My piece. She didn't follow. Didn't say a word. Just hit play on the show again. The characters on screen were still crying. Or hammering something. Probably both. I went downstairs, sat on the old recliner I'd been meaning to fix for a year, and wrote a list. Not of revenge. That would have been dramatic. Just a list of everything I still wanted out of my life. Emma wasn't on it. On Monday morning, I woke up 5 minutes before the alarm. Not because of some inner peace or sudden burst of productivity, but because I had reached a very specific level of clarity. I was no longer married to a person. I was married to a series of excuses. And I decided, quite peacefully, that I would begin returning the favor. There would be no shouting, no emotional outbursts, no scenes. If Emma could keep a secret rendezvous every Thursday with a man who probably named his plants, then I could start reclaiming my time, one awkwardly satisfying move at a time. The first thing I did was dig up the shared calendar. The one Emma insisted we use when she started reorganizing our lives for better balance. I'd stopped updating it months ago, because apparently she had her own version of balance that didn't require my input. I opened the app and began logging in mysterious events of my own. Random, specific, and incredibly vague. Meeting, 3 p.m., Thursday. Catch-up coffee, Friday, 11:15. Urban analysis group dinner, Tuesday, 6:20. I added repeating events too, so it would look like I had a whole bustling second life no one asked about. Then I synced it with her phone again. The sync had mysteriously been turned off months ago. I fixed that. That was just the warm-up. Next, I went through the house and started switching things. Subtle things. I reversed the orientation of the hand towels. I rearranged the bookshelf by color instead of genre. I replaced the frame quote in the hallway, "Live kindly," with one that said, "You can't be everyone's cup of tea, and that's fine, because some people like terrible tea." The label maker from her garage cleaning spree? I used it. She noticed the towels first. "Did you switch these?" she asked on Wednesday morning, standing with one eyebrow raised like she'd discovered a crime scene in the bathroom. "I thought they'd been facing the wrong way this whole time," I said. "Isn't that the whole point of reflection?" She didn't argue. Just walked out with the same face she made when baristas spelled her name with an A at the end. That night, I changed the Wi-Fi password. She asked for it 3 times. I gave her a different fake password every time. "It must be a glitch," I said. "Maybe the router's syncing with the smart fridge again." We didn't have a smart fridge. The next morning, I took her car and got the oil changed. Not because I'm thoughtful, but because I knew it would confuse her. The car wasn't due for another 2 months. I also had the floor mats shampooed and put a new air freshener in the glove compartment, one labeled New Credit Score. When she saw it, she looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "You got my oil changed?" "Yeah, it just felt like the right time." Plus, I was curious what the mechanic's opinion was on loyalty. Emma didn't ask what that meant. She just muttered something about losing track of her own calendar, which was interesting, since it now included my newly invented group dinner with the Urban Analysis Collective. Thursday night. "Do I know them?" she asked. "No," I said. "It's kind of an invite-only situation." She nodded slowly, clearly trying to figure out if I was lying. Spoiler, I was. By Friday, things got more entertaining. I had updated the playlist she used for her workouts, deleted her songs, replaced them with 27 renditions of the same instrumental track called Effort. I figured it was a subtle nod to what had been missing from our relationship. She stormed out of the garage 20 minutes into her rejuvenation time, muttering something about her Bluetooth malfunctioning. Technology's funny, I said. One day it works, next day it's just inconsistent. On Saturday, I told her I'd signed us up for a couple's scavenger hunt. She blinked at me like I'd suggested a joint bank account with her yoga mat. It's a community thing, I said. You like community. She hesitated. When is it? Sunday morning. Early. She smiled politely and said, maybe you could do it with someone else this time. Sure, I said. I'll invite someone from the urban analysis group. They're big on clues and ambiguity. Emma didn't respond. Later that evening, I started my real project. I made a profile. Not on a dating app. On a website for suburban handy person gigs. I used the alias Rick M. and listed skills I definitely didn't have. Fencing, tile repair, creative shelf installations. I included a picture of a guy I found on a stock photo site, bald, smiling, holding a level with the confidence of someone who understood drywall. Then I showed Emma the site. Ever seen this guy around? I asked. He looks familiar. She squinted. I don't think so. Huh, I said. He's been in the neighborhood a lot lately. Works for himself. Low rates. Good at fixing things. Emma didn't take the bait. But I left the tab open on the laptop. I knew curiosity had a timeline. Hers was around 6 hours. Sure enough, by morning, she'd looked him up. I could tell because the browser history was now mysteriously deleted. Emma never deleted anything. She believed in digital footprints. She also believed in manifesting clarity, whatever that meant. But apparently she didn't believe in straightforward questions. So I gave her something to interpret. That afternoon, I casually left a stack of papers on the counter. Half of them were receipts. The other half were blank paper with made-up bullet points like review proposal, confirm meeting with A, and contract options. I also included a random name, Monica. No context. Just lunch, Monica. When she walked by the stack, she paused. Looked down. Read everything. Didn't ask. At dinner, she cleared her throat. How's Monica? Oh, she's good, I said. Very professional. Emma stabbed at her salad. I thought you didn't like business lunches. I didn't. But you know, new energy, new direction. She didn't speak for a full minute. The next morning, she made coffee and didn't speak to me. But I caught her watching me from the hallway, the way someone looks at a puzzle piece they swear used to fit. I went into the garage and started reorganizing the paint cans by hue. Not because I care, but because it's deeply irritating to Emma when colors aren't stored by purpose. It took another week before she cracked. On a random Tuesday, she asked, is something going on with you? I looked up from the crossword. Like what? You've just been different. Well, I said, maybe I'm just engaging in meaningful dialogue with strangers who appreciate minimalism and textured experiences. She stared at me. What does that even mean? It means I'm tired of pretending nothing's happening while everything is clearly happening. Her mouth opened, then closed again. That moment, when people realize they no longer hold the upper hand, that's when clarity really shows up. I don't know what you're trying to do, she said finally. I'm doing what you've been doing. Only better. She blinked. What's that supposed to mean? Exactly what it sounds like. I stood up, walked to the other room, and left her with that. I didn't need to explain. Let her sit in it. Let her try to guess what was real and what wasn't. Just like I did. And that was enough for now. Emma didn't cry. That was the first thing I noticed. When people think about the end of something, they picture tears, shaking hands, voices catching on syllables like they're auditioning for a very earnest stage play. But Emma? She looked like someone waiting for a haircut. Not upset. Not angry. Just vaguely inconvenienced and trying to act like she wasn't thinking about something else. We were sitting at the kitchen table. The same table we bought together after that whole debate over whether oval shapes made the room look unserious. I let her win. Oval it was. It was supposed to symbolize harmony or flow or some other word that sounded like it came from a Scandinavian furniture ad. Now it just looked like a stage, and the actors were both reading the wrong scripts. Emma had her arms crossed. I had a spreadsheet open in front of me. Not because I needed one. I just thought if we were going to be distant, we might as well look official about it. She spoke first. So this is where we are now? I gave that question a good 10 seconds. Let it hang. Where do you think we are? I asked. Because from my seat, it's somewhere between farce and paperwork. She narrowed her eyes, the kind of look she usually saved for people who parked too close to her car. You've been acting like a game show host who forgot what show he's on. That's not inaccurate, I said. Though if this were a show, I'd at least expect a prize at the end. Maybe a toaster. Or an emotionally available spouse. I didn't cheat on you, she said, and I couldn't tell if it was meant to be persuasive or just efficient. I nodded. Okay. And I didn't download a fitness app and forget to use it. She exhaled through her nose like a tired executive. I spent time with someone. That's not the same as cheating. You lied about where you were. Repeatedly. I was trying to avoid this exact conversation. Mission accomplished, I said. It was great. Very enlightening. She uncrossed her arms and leaned back. I didn't do what you think I did. I think you went behind my back, week after week, made connections with someone else while pretending you were committed here. If there's another name for that, feel free to pitch it. It wasn't a relationship. Oh, it was a hobby. Don't be dramatic. I'm not. That's your thing, remember? The disappearing act. The revised history. The sudden interest in people who bring their own folding chairs. Emma stood up, walked around to the sink, turned on the water, and then turned it off again. No reason. Just movement. She faced me again. You've been punishing me. I've been adapting. There's a difference. You changed everything. The Wi-Fi. The towels. The calendar. And you changed Thursdays. So I figured we were just refreshing the schedule. You're impossible. No, I said. I'm just finally done playing my part in whatever improv theater you've been running here. She leaned against the counter, arms folded again, back in her usual posture of defense with a touch of moral superiority. She always looked like she was about to say something profound, but usually ended up quoting a podcast. You're being petty, she said. I'm being equal, I replied. You got to disappear without explanation. I decided to show up with over-explanation. Emma looked down at the floor like the tiles were going to offer her a better argument. Then she said, You never asked how I felt. I blinked. You're right. I should have set up a formal check-in between my job, our bills, and your weekly outings with the world's most inspirational barista. That's not fair. Nothing has been. She crossed the kitchen, sat back down, and looked at me in a way that might have once been considered soft, if it weren't for the 25 previous Thursdays. So what now? She asked. I looked at the spreadsheet again. It was blank. Just cell A1 blinking like it was trying to be meaningful. We have options, I said, channeling my best mid-level manager voice. We can pretend none of it happened and keep living in parallel, professionally distant, like those polite roommates who nod in the hallway and avoid eye contact. She didn't respond. Or, I continued, we can make this formal. Divide the assets. Go our separate ways. You can go on being someone's muse, and I can go back to listening to music I actually like. Still nothing from her. Or, I said, we can try to fix it. Actually fix it. That would require more honesty than we've had in the last year, but technically, it's still on the board. Emma didn't move. She looked at the center of the table, like she was trying to measure the exact weight of the silence. Do you want to fix it? I asked. She didn't answer immediately. Then, I don't know. That's the problem, I said. I know exactly what I want. You don't. That's how we ended up here. You kept calling confusion space, and I kept calling hope patience. I didn't mean to hurt you. You just didn't try not to. She flinched, just barely, then nodded. So what are you choosing? I didn't answer right away. I looked around the kitchen. It was still clean, still symmetrical, still filled with things we picked out together under the illusion that shared taste meant shared values. Then I looked at her. I'm choosing to stop guessing what version of you is going to walk in the door. She swallowed. That sounds like goodbye. Not necessarily, I said. But it sounds like I'm not going to keep waiting for you to finish deciding if I matter. We sat in silence for a while. Not the tense kind. Not the cinematic kind. Just regular, exhausted quiet. Finally, she stood up. Do you want me to go? I think that's up to you. She looked at me for a few seconds longer, then nodded. I'll stay at my sister's. Tell her I said hi, I said, because I like my exits to include unnecessary courtesy. Emma walked out without slamming anything, without delivering a speech, without a single backward glance. Just grabbed her bag, keys, and left like she was late for a class she forgot to register for. I stayed at the table. Eventually got up, closed the spreadsheet, shut down the computer, sat back down. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like someone was missing. I just felt alone. And that was easier to understand. Dividing up a shared life is nowhere near as dramatic as people make it seem. No tearful speeches in front of moving boxes, no slow-motion scenes of someone driving off into the fog with a nostalgic playlist. Mostly, it's just passwords, documents, and confirming whether or not the IKEA lamp belongs to one person or neither because it was always a little crooked and made the room look like a waiting area. Emma moved her stuff out in stages. I didn't offer to help, and she didn't ask. We were very civil. Impressively civil. It was the kind of energy you see between colleagues who once dated and now awkwardly sit on the same committee. We communicated through notes on the counter and calendar events like Emma picks up books or Eric will be using the garage, no interruption. All business. No small talk. One afternoon, she came to get the painting she bought from a local artist during one of her independent expression phases. She stood in the doorway holding it like it was a newborn. I gave her a thumbs up and went back to updating my phone plan. That was the general tone of things. Charles, my unofficial life coach and full-time chaos hobbyist, called me a few days after she left. You're not going to, shave your head and start wearing hiking sandals, right? He asked. Why would I do that? I don't know. Post-divorce rebranding. People do weird stuff. One guy I knew started building model ships. Another started Ironman training. His knee gave out 3 weeks in, and now he limps with bitterness. I cleaned out a drawer. That's as far as I've gone. He sounded relieved. All right. Keep it boring. Boring's safe. I didn't tell him I'd already begun building a spreadsheet called Unrequested Life Adjustments, where I logged small things I'd started doing differently. For example, no more decorative pillows. No more pretending to like seasonal door wreaths. No more pretending I enjoyed going to artisan marketplaces where soap costs more than a decent pair of headphones. I also unsubscribed from several newsletters that had somehow become my burden over the years: Mindful Monday, Couples Cooking Challenge, and something called Grow Together Weekly, which had started every email with, "Hey lovebirds." I deleted every single one with the kind of satisfaction you only get when you've been polite for way too long. Emma called 2 weeks later. She didn't open with, "Hi," or "How are you?" Just, "I picked up my slow cooker and I think I left the instruction manual in the drawer by the stove. Did you see it?" I paused. I used that manual to line the bottom of the trash bin. Symbolically. She exhaled, and I imagined her looking up at the ceiling like I'd just told her I used the Constitution as a napkin. You're still doing the sarcasm thing? Of course. It's cheaper than therapy. There was silence for a moment. Then she said, "I'm not calling to fix anything. I just didn't want it to feel like it ended without anything real." It didn't end without anything, I said. It ended with a spreadsheet, a medium-sized van, and a quiet walk from the dining room to your car. I meant emotionally. I know what you meant. And I also know that what's real doesn't need an encore. Another pause. I was confused, she said. No argument there. I didn't plan for things to happen the way they did. Do people ever? She didn't answer that. I wasn't fulfilled, she said, like she'd been rehearsing it for a podcast episode titled Owning Your Narrative. I wasn't either, I replied, but I didn't invite someone else to fill the gaps. You're not blameless in any of this. Never said I was, I said. But I didn't lie, and I didn't sneak around. I just existed, which, in hindsight, might have been my biggest crime. That's unfair. What part? The part where I didn't see it coming? Or the part where I spent the last year wondering if I was just boring enough to make you disappear? There was a stretch of silence that seemed longer than usual. I imagined she was deciding whether to end the call with dignity or try to salvage a sliver of moral ground. You were never boring, she finally said. Thanks, I replied. That means a lot coming from someone who scheduled weekly meetings with a man who makes coffee sound like philosophy. You're still angry. I'm not angry. I'm just finally tired of lying politely. I could hear her breathing. Then the telltale tone of someone about to say something that won't land the way they want it to. I hope you're okay. I will be, I said. Because I'm finally not sharing my life with a mystery I'm supposed to pretend is a personality. She said goodbye. I said goodbye. We both hung up without dragging the moment out like a cheap novel. The funny part? After she left, nothing felt dramatically different. No deep emptiness. No echoes. No sudden realization that I missed her laugh or her questions about curtain colors. Just space. Not metaphorical. Literal space. I had an entire closet I could reorganize without commentary. I started going to the community gym. Not because I had some big transformation in mind. I just wanted to walk on a treadmill without anyone suggesting a podcast that pairs well with movement. I listened to old music I liked and deleted half the playlists that had been curated for romantic getaways we never took. I found Emma's old planner one day in a storage bin she forgot. I flipped through it. Names, dates, places. I wasn't angry. It felt like looking at someone else's schedule, someone I didn't know anymore. I closed it, placed it in a new bin labeled Archived Unhelpfulness, and stacked it behind my toolbox. Life didn't suddenly become better, but it became mine again. I started saying no more. No to events I didn't care about. No to conversations that went nowhere. No to being half of something that only made sense on paper. Charles invited me to a trivia night with his friends. I said yes. He asked what category I wanted. I said, things people don't say when they're being honest. It was a solid round. I didn't win, but I didn't lose either. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel